tips and tricks related to Microsoft Graph API and some troubleshooting steps on what you can implement in your code in order to troubleshoot the errors related to the Graph API. All right, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing to check is whether you have app designed to run the interactive mode or in unattended mode. So when it comes to Graph, we have two types of permission. One is delegated permission and the other one is application permission. So often people, what they do is they know that they need to set this mail.send permission. So instead of putting the delegated type of permission, they put on the application type permission. So if I go, I'll quickly show you an example. I'll go to one of the app registration that I have. Um, uh, okay, one of the application. So I'll go to the API permission section. I click on add permission. We need to select Microsoft Graph. So there are two types of permission. The application permission allows you to run your application in background. So in your use case where you do not need user interaction, you should be selecting application permission. And the use case where you need the interaction of the user, you need to select the delegated permission. So a lot of people get confused over here which type of permission you need. Okay, so you need to select appropriate permission related to that. So also there are few APIs which do not support application permission. So if you go to the documentation of that particular API, you will get the permission section of that API, and inside that permission, you need to check which permissions are allowed and which are not. So in this case, send mail API, you can clearly see that the delegated as well as the application permissions are allowed over here. Okay. Apart from the permission, I see most users forget to grant the admin consent and they end up getting 403 access denied error. So this is another thing that you need to do. You need to grant admin consent um, to to the permissions that are listed over here. Okay. So once you have tested that, once you have decided, confirm the type of flow that your application would be using. And after that, you'd be checking the permission have been set correctly or not. What you can do is you can use jwt.io to, you know, decode your access token. So let's suppose you'd be sending mail dot send mail. You'll be using this particular API and you'd like to see whether your access token contains mailed or this particular permission or not. So what you can do is you can use Postman uh, to get the access token or any of the app of your choice to get the access token, and you can decode this access token using jwt.io. Okay, so if you go to this website, you need to paste in your access token over here. So once you paste your access token, um, you will get the relevant details. You can decode your access token away in short. Yeah, so here it shows me the type of token is JWT. It also shows me the type of token it is. If I go to the scope, um, type of app, so it shows me the app name. So in this case, it is IMAP sample. If it is authenticated type of user type token, then it will show you who has requested for the token. So you will see your name over here and here as well. And then you can get the UPN details along with the tenant ID and those stuffs. Inside the scope, you will see the permission. So this is the section that you need to keep an eye on. If you're running certain APIs and you get 403 access denied error, then you can quickly check, decode your token and quickly check the scope, whether that particular scope exists in your token or not. So this is one of the way that you can use uh, to decode the token and check whether your token does contain the required permissions or not. All right. Talking about permission, you can also use the Graph Explorer Now, suppose you're not sure permissions are required, um, which permission are required to run my profile. So this is just an example. So first of all, you need to sign in. I'll quickly sign in using my account. Okay, so if I go to my profile or my mail, okay, wait, um, one of these, I'll run one of these. Okay, so it is me endpoint. So if you get 403, you can quickly check the modify permission section and it will let you know which permission are needed in order to run this particular API. So in this case, if it was send mail API, you can change this to me slash send mail or yeah, it is me dot send mail. So in this case, 405 method is 405 error is being thrown because it doesn't allow get method. You need to change it to post. And based on that, if you go to the modify permission section, it tells you that you need mail dot send permission in order to use this particular API. All right. So this Graph Explorer only works as a delegated part of the token. You can only perform delegated type of permissions over here. In case you want to test application type of token, you'll have to use tools like Postman. Okay, so apart from that, if I go back to the profile section, okay, so in code snippet, you can get the corresponding PowerShell queries that you need in order to run the same API. So in future, if you come across any of the Graph API and you need to find the corresponding PowerShell query of it, you can probably use Graph Explorer and it will show you the corresponding PowerShell query real quick. Apart from PowerShell, you also have support for C Sharp, JavaScript, Java, and Golang language. Okay, so it gives you a quick snippet of the code that you can use in order to run the corresponding API. All right, so this is one of the things that you can use and leverage Graph Explorer to your service. Okay, so coming to the SDK issues, so we have Microsoft Graph SDK. Okay, so any issues, if you come across any issues related to SDK, the recommended method is to, test the raw call using the Graph Explorer, or if it is application permissions, and you need to test that call using the Postman application. But in case it is related to the SDK, then you may need to report it to the GitHub forum. You can reach out to the GitHub forum. I'll paste the link to the description below. All right. So one more thing that you need to check is there are two versions of Graph API. So one is version 1.0, which is the production ready version, and the another one is the beta version. So if you look at the beta version, you may find additional queries and features in the beta API. So this features and permissions and everything related to beta is not available in version 1.0 simply because all right, so these are few of the methods that you can use for the beta and version 1.0. So one more disclaimer about beta is you should not be using this beta versions in production apps simply because yeah, it is not production ready, and simply because they do not have support for beta APIs, and you should be only was using the version 1.0 in your app. Apart from that, I think yeah, that's all you can use for the Graph API. All right. Apart from that, if you go talk about endpoint manager, which is Intune. You can use F12 to all right. So talking about Intune manager, uh, Intune Graph API. So what you can do is simply to get details related to Intune, you can use F12 on your Intune portal to get the corresponding Graph API. So if I go to all devices and go to the network section, I can get the corresponding Graph API running in the background. So yeah, there you go. So graph.microsoft.com, device management and manage device. So this is the API that is running in the background and giving me details on the Intune portal. So you should be using F12 on the endpoint manager admin center in order to get the corresponding graph API. All right. So these are the few of the tips and tricks that you can use in the graph API while using. All right. Apart from that, if you come across any other issues like Teams not able to create meetings, then what we would recommend is yeah. So apart from that, if you come across any other issues like the issues on while using the Graph API, so what I would recommend is trying that same scenario using the user interface. Like suppose, for example, if you're having trouble creating the Outlook meeting, or you see some values are not uh, displaying properly or not being assigned properly, or you're getting few errors while creating the meetings through Graph, then I would recommend you to do the same scenario or reproduce the same scenario using the user interface and try to see and isolate the issue related to Graph. Like if you have some issues with the Graph API, ideally in nutshell, you need to replicate same thing using the UI and check whether you're able to do it on the UI as well. So if once you identify that the problem is only with the graph and not with the UI, then you finally know that the root where the root cause lies, and you can report it to Microsoft that something with the graph API is not working as expected. All right, that's all for today. And if you have any more questions or suggestions, please do let me know. And if you have any other questions or queries related to this, or if you like to share anything else, or would you like me to cover anything else, please feel free to let me know in the comment section, and I'll be happy to help. Thank you.